Okay, this is an instructional video for our type variant part of Studio One. This comes after you've digitized your mark, right? You have your nice mark and you've cleaned it up and it's really lovely. And now you want to add type to it. So the first thing that we need to do is you'll notice in the right hand, so the assignment is to use 5 artboards and do these type explorations, 4 on each page, right? And it's 5 combinations of type. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to the artboard section, right, and add more artboards. And so what you'll see is I've added these extra artboards. It's just like adding more pages to a document, and maybe I added too many. I'm not sure, right? But we did that, and we're there. And so that's our first step, just as a setup, right? And so now the whole purpose of this is to explore both the feeling of typography and as it pertains to creating your logo here, and the balance, how to then balance these 2 marks, right? And there's 2 ways that you have to explore for each, right? Left and right setup and top and bottom setup. So why don't I just go ahead and just, if I was you, this is how I would do it. So first thing is we should have a name of our restaurant, right? Or I'm going to use something that's not a restaurant. I'm going to call this Pennsylvania. I don't know. Sounds good. And I'm going to give it its second line, which is a qualifier, which is pet hospital, right? And we should have to think about how we set them. Like this one I capitalized this one I didn't, right? So you have all these casings you could also explore. If I wanted to, I can make this Pennsylvania. But I'm just going to leave it just regular casing for this line. I forgot how to spell Pennsylvania. And this one I'm going to leave here, right? Now this is not very good. In actuality, it's not completely imbalanced, but well, first of all, this is the name of your restaurant or whatever. That's more important than this line. So I'm going to go ahead and make this one bigger to pull more weight. Now you're going to notice, let me forget about this for a moment, and there's a lot of things that we have to think about as we're setting this, right? And it's about balance. It's not just about balance between the logo and these. What about balancing this out just so it feels right? I think that hospital's a little too big. It just feels a little big. I'm going to go ahead and make it a little smaller, right about there. Again, this isn't science. I'm just kind of going by what feels good. I'm going to worry about the space, right? I don't want something like this where these are touching and it's terrible and it looks unintentional, right? This descender comes down. I'm going to give it just a little bit more air so that these look nice, right? And now we can think of this as one unit at this point. And now we have to think about how then this unit balances this unit. And so think about it. There's kind of this imaginary access line, right? That this thing has, right? So again, if we kind of think back to the thing of type, right? This kind of takes up this space. Whoops. Oh, man. And actually, I'm gonna, just because these aren't aligned, I'm gonna go ahead and just align these 2 P's for a second, just because it's gonna bother me, right? Because it all matters. So basically, I have this box and I have this, which kind of is pretty much this shape. Now, it's not always gonna work out that that centering these 2 things now would be the win, right? If I take this, oops, if I just center these 2 things, you still have to kind of visually go by what's here, right? And sometimes that may mean nudging one thing up, right? Because it's actually, there's a little bit less weight up top of this logo in there. It's not much off center, it's just not perfectly center, right? So think about that on the left to right ones, right? Because you have to do 2 left to right ones. But here I'm still just picking typography. That was starting to talk about balance. So if we look at this balance, though, let's focus on balance. This still seems a little anemic to this. I know it's a pretty good size. It's not terrible. I'm not going to say that this is a terrible balance. It's just that this is so thick, and this is so maybe it's a type choice thing. I'm going to go ahead and change this. Well, first of all, I don't like Myriad Pro. I'm going to go to one of my favorite fonts just because that way I start off with what I know. I have to stop because this kerning right here of this P and E really bothers me, right? So I'm going to go ahead and kern that because it's also going to help affect how clean I think it is, right? So I'm going to kern it at this point after I select the typeface I think I want to use. But I think I want to do something else. This is a thick line, right? So I'm going to actually make this first line there, black. Oh, I'm starting to like this. Now look at the weight of these 2 things together, right? Now you can think of this as a whole unit, right? And what I'm striving to do is to make a good balance, right? Kind of along that vertical axis, and just so much so that my eye isn't pulling me too much to one side or the other, not to the mark or that. I want to see this thing as one feel this as one really evenly spaced thing. Now, in some ways, I think this is still a little too big, right? But maybe that's my first exploration, right? We have to explore at least 2 with left and right. So maybe I'll just pull out a copy, right? If I select everything and hold Option. And now let me try balancing it this way, right? And what do I start thinking? I don't know. Maybe I'll even futz it a little more. It just comes down to what feels right, all right? And that's left and right. But let's think about top and down. So this is going to be an asymmetrical balance you're going to have with this. We also need to explore with each type combination, right? I have my type combination, and now I want to use this up and down. When you use it top and bottom, right? And I'm going to pull out a copy, right? Obviously, I don't want it left aligned. I think I want to center align everything. When I select everything, you'll notice your top here change. And there's this one horizontally aligned center. Look at that, and it perfectly centers it. Same things apply. It may be weightier on one side, and you may need to just like nudge it with the things. Here we have to watch this, right? And maybe here I think, oh, it's getting too big on the bottom. And still, this is even too big. So I might just do that, figure out where I put that. I really don't like the way these go together, but what else am I going to do? Maybe just give them a little more air, right? And so it's just about figuring out what feels like a good balance. I think what's bothering me is this is too big. So I'm going to even get that one smaller, right? That's that. And right, I'll do another exploration. I'll say, well, okay, I kind of like that one. Can I like it any other way? What if I make this image? What if I make this a lot bigger? You know, will that affect the balance? Right. What we're striving for is to find which one seems pretty balanced, and that one actually seems pretty good too. It's not you can't have 2 that seem pretty good. Like, I mean, I think I'm okay with this one. This one looks a little small. This one, I don't know. I'm ambivalent. Again, we're not going to master this, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. There's just ones that maybe feel better. You know, some you have to live with a little longer before you can decide. And I'm going to do that for all these sheets, right? So let me talk about mixing letter forms. So I did this, and this is fine. The font's okay and whatever, and I could go in and rekern it some more if I really wanted to. But let me think about the qualities of the mark I've made. It's very roundy. Now, I didn't make this, but it's very roundy, right? And this is very angular. So what if I could find a font that maybe instead of these sharp corners has more rounded corners? And I know of a font, right? You may have to go looking for fonts. But there is something called Arial Rounded, right? And now look at this. The qualities of that and this are starting to get a little closer, right? So we're starting to think about then what type, right? There's all kinds of ways we can pick the typefaces, right? And one of them is to match like the shape of the type. This, right, there is actually no Arial Rounded, not bold, but I think it's way too thick when I add this because it's a second line, right? So I don't like that. So I'd have to go searching, right? And we have all different ways that we can add them together. So right, I have this sans serif. So maybe I want to use a serif font with it, and so I'll look for a serif font that I think looks nice enough, right? Boy, I don't like the way this Y hangs, right? And it's sometimes just a matter of I'm going to tuck that one in like that just for the heck of it, right? And we should be looking at that. And that's what you're doing for this whole project. And don't make it too like, again, I'm struggling with how I want to do this one. If I wish I had a regular version of this, right? But we're looking for weights, right? Don't bring out, don't think to use some like super hairline font, right? Like with a really dark mark. Because look at this. No matter what I do, this and this are going to be very hard to balance. I could maybe make this smaller and start to try to balance it, and it could get better, right? I'm sure I could really, if I really work it, I could do it. But again, look at how the qualities of this, how thin this is, and how thick this is. Pay attention to your mark. Most of you are going to have pretty thick marks, so you're going to use pretty thick text. But that is the whole type variant project and what you should be striving for, right? So again, think about that invisible access that exists, right, between things, and how to balance. So it should be balanced top and bottom, it should be balanced left and right. Same thing over here on the top and bottom, right? Invisible access that goes right down the middle. We should feel like it's balanced left and right. We should feel that it's balanced between the words. And now looking at this one, right, I don't like it. Now I like more this balance, right? Like these words and this, maybe if I make this even still a little more smaller, right? Get a nice balance. That's what we're looking for in all of this exploration so that you can have your final product.